Defining the mission is so important, and most airplane buyers completely miss this. If you're interested in buying an airplane one day, this video is going to give you what I think is the best place to start. So many people message me asking about, should I buy a 182 or a Cherokee or a Cirrus one day? And honestly, I think this is the wrong place to start. Now, it's understandable that we would just look at the airplanes that are in the marketplace and start making comparisons between them to see which one could be right for us. But really, I think we need to look at it the complete opposite way. This served me well when buying my 182, and I know it will for you too. Instead of jumping in and looking at what airplanes we like and thinking about what our budget is going to be, instead, we need to think about what mission we're going to need that airplane to accomplish. Defining the mission is so important, and most airplane buyers completely miss this. Similar to house buying, you wouldn't just say, I want a modern farmhouse that has a budget of X dollars. No, instead you start actually filling out and describing what the mission of that house is going to be. Now, we might not actually put that terminology on it, say, what's the mission? But that's exactly what we're doing. We need at least 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. We want to be in this neighborhood, so we have access to these schools. You're describing the mission. And you might find that getting a house that accomplishes that mission might be unrealistic with your budget. And so you either have to change your list of non-negotiables in that house or your budget to find something that can work based on what you're seeing in the marketplace. And it's no different for airplanes. This is exactly how we should start when thinking about purchasing a plane. I like to think about defining an airplane's mission in 6 different categories. The first is budget. Now, this will really define what can be realistic with all of the other categories that we're about to define. And you might have to budge some in some of these categories in order to stay within your budget. Now, when I say budget, I am referring to purchase price here, but it's really important to note here that purchase price is not the only monetary commitment that you will have when buying an airplane. Really comes down to not only the purchase price, but also the ongoing operating and ownership costs associated with those airplanes. And they're gonna be different for everyone, and they're gonna be different for every airplane. And so before you jump into purchase price, it's really worth thinking, okay, what's my overall budget here? And this is worth an entirely separate discussion, one that I've already had in another video that I will link up here in the corner and down in the description. Definitely encourage you to come back and watch that for sure. Next is seats. How many people do you want to be able to carry on average? Now, it's worth noting that in many cases, if you routinely need to be able to take 4 people, then honestly, you probably actually need a 6-seat aircraft. Once you start to actually do the math on useful load, a 4-person airplane is not always a great 4-person airplane, if I'm making sense. So if you need 4, maybe look at a 6-seater. If you think you only need 2, I would really encourage you to look at a 4-seater, and so on and so forth. It's just something I've really noticed about most airplanes that might not be obvious to the first-time buyer. Next is useful load. How much does the airplane need to be able to carry? Keep in mind that what might seem like a decent useful load can quickly go to next to nothing once you actually put fuel in the aircraft. Maybe with full fuel on board, you can only carry a few hundred pounds, which really impacts who and what you can actually take with you. Now, on the other hand, you might not actually need full fuel, and so your practical useful load really increases substantially. For example, in my Cessna 182, with full fuel on board, I can carry just over 650 pounds of people and stuff. But full fuel for me is 75 gallons, which is around 6 hours worth of fuel at cruise. Not to mention if I want to go an economy cruise and really pull it back, that's more than 6 hours of flying. And in very few instances do I actually need to be carrying around that much fuel. So on the other hand, if I only have a half tank worth of fuel, I can carry just under 900 pounds worth of people and stuff. That's a considerable difference and a pretty good useful load. And I can make it for a couple of hours. That's hundreds of miles plus reserves. And so you definitely want to look at the numbers kind of on paper for the different aircraft you're considering and the useful load, but really use your brain here. I mean, don't always just assume you're going to have to fill up the tank and then use only what's left. You might not have to fly around with a full tank of gas. Or on the other hand, if it's a really small tank, you might always have to fly with a full tank of gas. And so that useful load with full fuel is really as good as you're going to get. So definitely look at the numbers, but don't forget to use your brain. Next is speed. It really gets exponentially more expensive to go faster than about 200 knots. And when you think about it, really like a 20 to 30 knot difference really isn't that big of a difference when you're only going maybe 100 or 200 miles. And so it's expensive to go fast, and it might not actually add up to that big of a net difference for you. But the more interesting thing that I have realized over the course of time is that if you're going on some flying trip, as soon as you land and you go to lunch, what are you talking about? You're talking about how fun the flight was to actually get out there and go on the adventure. So really, what's the rush? If you get there another 20 minutes faster, that's just 20 minutes of less flying that you get to do. Now, that's kind of the way I've justified it in my mind because it is expensive to go fast. And so for me, this hasn't been a huge priority, but in a perfect world, yes, it is a blast to go fast. Next is range and performance. How far do you realistically need to be able to go? And what kind of performance do you need when you take off, when you're en route, and when you are arriving? Will you be landing on all long paved runways? Or do you want to be able to go into the backcountry and have access to short airstrips? Will you be flying mostly near sea level? Or would you routinely benefit from having a turbocharged airplane? You really need to think about your average performance needs of the aircraft. Next is equipment. And a good starting place for equipment is to put yourself in one of two categories. Do I need the airplane to be equipped for VFR flying or IFR flying, instrument flight rules? And this is going to dictate what type of avionics you need on board. But also think about the specific instruments. Are there certain things that I definitely want the airplane to already be equipped with? And for example, in my 182, I really wanted to have a Garmin GPS. I wanted to have an HSI of some kind, and I also really wanted an autopilot. And so in general, it can be more affordable to find airplanes that are already equipped with some of the things that you want, rather than to buy it and then actually go install it yourself. There's definitely exceptions to this rule though. Okay, now a huge money-saving tip here. If I could just take the camera and just shake you here and say, just remember this one thing. This is what you should remember. Out of all the categories I just described, really try to take those and really build your average mission. That's really important. Your average mission, not your ideal mission. Because sure, ideally, we'd love to load up all of our friends, all of their golf clubs, go 500 miles nonstop, 300 knots into the mountains, into the altitude and everything in a turbocharged, pressurized airplane and have a great time. But is that really ideal? Unless you have an unlimited budget, it's probably not. And so you really have to think about your average mission. What are you doing 99% of the time? And if you buy an airplane that you can use for your 99% mission, you're going to save a lot of money over purchasing an airplane that's built for your 1% mission. And if you can do that, I know that's going to save you some money. And when looking through these listings, this is really, really important. I got distracted because I thought of you going really, really important. And when you're looking through listings, this is really, really important. You're gonna notice some purchase price opportunities that could either indicate it's a really awesome deal or it's a complete dog of an airplane that you should totally avoid. And how do you know the difference? Well, I've looked through literally thousands of different airplane listings, and I'm gonna give you the things you should really look out for and also teach you how to build your own comparable model so you can confidently do some market research to identify the good deals from the bad. And I'm gonna show you all that information in the video that's on screen, and I'll see you there.